Hello, everyone, and welcome to our information session on international law and organizations here at the Fletcher School. My name is Yaritza Peña. I am the Associate Director of Admissions here at the Fletcher School, and I have two professors with me, Professor Johnstone and Professor Burgess, who are here to share some thoughts and happenings within the International Law and Organizations Department here. So I'll pass it over to you, Professor Burgess. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be here and talk a little bit about international law and international law at Fletcher. I began my legal career by practicing law for more than 35 years in a global law firm, doing international and global transactions, as well as taking a sabbatical and working on arms control issues at the US State Department. When I came to Fletcher, it was in part to run the LLM program, a dedicated law program we have here at the school, and also to teach general courses because all Fletcher students actively participate in one way or the other on one or more law courses, even those not involved in the LLM program. I've taught international mergers and acquisitions and international finance law relating to the set of considerations of international law in the conduct of global business, and in particular the rise and maybe the current fall of globalization in that context. And I also teach international law of the sea, a topic which is of vital importance, both from a geopolitical standpoint, a climatic standpoint, and a food resource standpoint in today's world. Both of those areas share two features. They are highly interrelated and cross-disciplinary, and that works out, I think, really well in the context of Fletcher. Law courses are an embedded part of the Fletcher curriculum. And it means that you get exposure to the key sets of issues from a legal standpoint taught by dedicated law faculty, in addition to having exposure, depending on your course mix, to all the other considerations of international economics and international relations. And I think that is unique among schools. There are law schools, but they don't introduce you to those topics, and they're international relations schools that don't provide much exposure with respect to the law. The benefits for everyone, I think, from that interdisciplinary approach are enormous. When I teach, I have an opportunity to learn from students, as other students do who have experience in the area, and students in turn understand how international law informs and in many ways sets the framework for a wide range of issues, from migration to issues Professor Johnstone will talk about, to the conduct of international business. And one of the rewards of it is being told by students after graduating that, for instance, they went into international investment banking, but the knowledge of the legal considerations that go into cross-border transactions was a great advantage. Or just a couple of days ago, a note I received from a student from last year who had taken international law of the sea. And they said it was the one international course they had taken, but they currently work for an international consulting firm on Middle Eastern issues. And their first two assignments were on the new agreement between Israel and Lebanon on exploitation of oil resources and disputes within the Persian Gulf, which they were able to address not only with their international relations background, but what they had learned about international law here at Fletcher. And that's an enormously rewarding experience and part of the fun of teaching here. And I think I'll stop there, Ian, and let you take over. Professor Johnstone can talk a little bit on other aspects.
Yeah, great. Thank you, John. And thank you, Yaritza, for organizing this. I've been a professor of international law here at Fletcher since the year 2000, and my focus is on international organizations. And before coming here, I worked for about 10 years at the United Nations. And an animating theme of all of my teaching and all of my research is the interaction between international law and international politics. How international politics affects the law, which is relatively straightforward, although not simple, but more interesting and more important, almost from my point of view, is how international law affects international politics. I'm engaged in some research here that over the past few years, students have been involved with. I did something called Pandemic Primer, a primer on international law and pandemics, the precursor to which was a primer that Professor Burgess organized on international law and the sea. And for both of those, actually, students did the drafting, and they produced little chapters on each aspect of international law that related to the subject area. I'm also working on a project on cybersecurity, building a cybersecurity regime in which students have been involved. I've been working on a conflict management handbook in which students have been involved. And then I've been doing some other things. My big research project going forward is on international organizations in an age of pluralism. With respect to the law program, let me just add a couple of words to what Professor Burgess said about what I think makes it interesting and distinctive. To begin with, well, first of all, we have an LLM program, as Professor Burgess said, but also our MALD program, our MA program, our MIB program, all of our programs include law courses in them, and every law course is open to every student. And so that means that in a typical course, you might have a handful of people who have a legal background, but also many people who don't have a legal background. And that actually makes it very interesting, I think, from the point of view of engaging with each other. I would say that even compared to the best law schools in the country and those that concentrate on international law, our program stacks up in terms of the number of courses and the breadth of courses in international law. So you really do have the opportunity to get intensively involved in international law. But we're not a law school, and therefore most of the courses are not taught exactly the same way they would be in a law school. As I mentioned, my focus or my approach is international law and politics. Others may be looking at international law and economics, or international law and development, or international law and society. So there always seems to be an and something, which I think is important because it suggests that we're not just teaching or primarily teaching the fundamentals of legal jurisprudence, but also the way international law impacts the real world of international relations. Finally, international law is situated, at least from my perspective, in a slightly broader field that we call global governance. And to my mind, global governance captures international law and international institutions, primarily intergovernmental institutions like the UN and the World Trade Organization and the World Bank and the European Union, but also in this day and age, many non-governmental organizations and non-governmental actors who participate in some form in global governance. So if you come here and study at Fletcher, you're going to get a good dose of international law. You're going to get a good dose of how international relations are governed or managed in ways that are not purely legal, and obviously a good understanding of many other aspects of international relations that may interest you. We do hope you consider Fletcher. We know most of you are considering Fletcher. We hope you decide to come here. We don't think you're going to regret it. Those of you who are interested in international law almost certainly won't regret it. And we're all committed to ensuring this is as valuable an experience for you as possible. Thank you.
And let me just add that it is in my judgment, and I've had an opportunity to see a lot of law schools in action, it does offer a very robust and broad set of international law courses, as Professor Johnstone said, and that if in the course of looking at your options and what you're interested in, you wish to contact someone on the law faculty, I know that we'd be happy to talk with you, and you can coordinate that through the admissions team.